So it's officially over, and officially not no AOE, no official, no original ending. After years of prayers and hopes and everything, and yeah, we got an hour and a half. That's literally verbatim from the manga. Um, some some context. Like I was a manga reader, and I'm someone who's known what the ending has been for years, like everyone else, and like a lot of other people. And when I first read the ending of the manga, I was disappointed, but I guess I didn't hate it just yet. I recognized the last bit of the final arc was so much weaker than pretty much everything else, and I think that kind of softened the blow as month by month. I was like, okay, it's a little bit weaker than the ending came, and I was like, knowing that they weren't going to go full rumbling or they're going to go for kind of like some kind of cop out ending, as it was very clear that these guys would win and the rumbling would stop, right? And I was like, okay, all things considered, it isn't the worst thing ever, but I had a lot of problems with it and everything. But as time has gone on, right, despite being disappointed to mix originally, as time has gone on and I've realized a lot of the frustrations again, I don't hate it as much as a lot of the online community does to a degree, but I still see its issues. As you look back and revisit a lot of parts of the series and see all the foreshadowing and everything that's led up to it, all the problems, all the plot holes that the ending has created and everything, it's tough to even enjoy it to any degree. And so that's where I'm coming from this, where at best I was like, at best they're going to switch it up, right? Which we kind of knew wasn't really going to happen. But more realistically, was what kind of happened with the part before this, where even though the manga was kind of weak in that section, they did a really good job at it, doing an adaptation of that, because they took all. They fixed the pacing, they added the music, the fluidity of the animation, dialogue felt better, especially with the voice actors and everything. So typical things that where anime can elevate a manga, and again, mostly the pacing and how things are characterized and making fights better, making conversations clearer, just making things feel better. So I came into this hopeful where I recognize from a story beats element, I still would be upset with a lot of pretty much everything that was decided from a storytelling aspect, but it's tough because the I don't feel like they nailed it here. And maybe it's just because they're working with the weakest part of a franchise here. But no, I felt like the adaptation of these last 5 chapters was a noble attempt, but really didn't do anything out of legitimately what the chapters were, versus the other ones where they have, or the other ones have some caveats, or the other ones have some leeway or actually go out of the way to correct some things, right? Anime has always been considered the actual full canon because Isayama will come on and make changes. And he even made an announcement before this saying that, hey, I'm writing some stuff. I helped with a little tinkering. And considering how controversial the ending was, I thought that he'd have a bigger part to play in maybe fixing a lot of this. Again, maybe not changing the ending because that's kind of tough, right, with the way it's set up, but maybe changing and clearing up a lot of things. And I don't, we didn't get that. It's legit the same ending, with only thing missing is the thanks Eren for committing mass genocide for us, and that's the only thing that they removed. Which, like, it's disappointing. It's really disappointing to see this because it's kind of a verbatim one-on-one on this, and I've still had a lot of issues with execution, right? Just from an execution of how Mappa adapted this, right? And I'm not in my usual setting, right? I'm not on my usual TV, so this was kind of like not the presentation maybe I wanted, and maybe that had an effect on it, and I'll fully admit that, but it felt like the animation here wasn't as, it was clean and crisp and no huge issues, but there's nothing that like shocked me from a take. Like you had like Hanji fights, or you have different like ways that they visualize the things that we saw in the manga, or took different leniencies with like how it's adapted, or certain shots that just like really are like, wow, that's phenomenal. And I didn't get any of those shots here where I was like, oh, they stepped up the mark. Like even the Eren Armin fight was about the same month. The way they like pace certain things was not great in my opinion. Like I felt like the pacing was still off, and again, partially because they're adapting the manga, but they didn't really fix the pacing. And the fights were fine. Like it didn't have that fluidity or connection that I felt like they've added to a lot of these fights in this final arc. So I'm left here wondering, like, there's not a moment in that I would want to rewatch, because with Attack on Titan, and that's my cat snoring, with Attack on Titan more than any other anime, really for me, there's so many core moments I rewatch just because of how well it was handled, right? I don't know how many times I've watched the Reiner reveal, or how many times I've watched like Eren activate the founding powers for the first time, or even just the rumbling scenes, Grisha like freaking out. And I feel like we had moments in here that could have done that, right? Whether it's blowing up Eren, or the colossal fight, or even, I don't know, like there's a few different things, but it's like nothing in here felt like it took the extra step. It just felt like, and I don't want to say lazy, right? Because I don't think they did a bad job, but it just seemed like a very straightforward adaptation that isn't to the standard of what Attack on Titan, at least the anime, is. Because usually it goes to the extra level and makes it like something special, right? Like far superior than the manga, in my opinion, which still a few things from the manga overall as a whole that would have been nice in the anime as a whole, but for the most part the anime has always been an improvement because of the quality voice acting, the quality animation, the music, and everything. And even going from the music thing, which is what usually gives me the chills in these scenes, it felt like they just kept on throwing in the nostalgia tracks without really any timing or proper placement of them, right? Like it's weird because these tracks are usually what like freak me out. Like I'll hear like a throwback track or a new one, I'll be like like goosebumps like every time. In like me more than anyone, like I get goosebumps really easily. I get tearful, I get emotional, and it's like every single part has done that to me. And I don't think there's been a single episode, and I know not the whole anime is consistent all the way through, but for me there's never been an episode I've been like bored on. And I feel like for the first time ever, I was just kind of watching this like I'm not like engaged 1000% like I owe Sam, and I feel like they've always done a way to grasp me. And I know I'm like maybe a mega fan of this franchise, and it's tough to say, but like this, it was an hour and a half, and I was like, dude, I should be engrossed in every single second of it. And it just wasn't. And as you see every meme scene come on, like it's there. They had Eren lying on the ground saying, no, I don't want that for 10 years at least. I mean, like it actually was all there. And it's weird to see that adapted after just years of people memeing and saying like, how's it gonna, and it's just pretty much verbatim on there, right? They didn't add anything to like Historia, and they didn't add anything to like many of the fights. And we still got the Eren and Mikasa head kissing. We still have like all that, like, and look, just from a storytelling perspective, right? Just to hit on the main points, right? No matter what, this always feels like a retcon, and it just it will, and I think it always will, right? There's no way around it. Every single foreshadowing point, everything is very clear that Yams wanted to go with the full rumbling. And I'm not saying that's the right ending for this, and I'm not saying I'm a supporter that it couldn't end in any other way, because I agree there's like many ways you can take it, but it's such a cop-out to still kind of make Eren the fallen hero as character, and just hitting on a few things, like just the ease that they win a lot of these battles. That talk with Armin and Zeke wasn't really expanded upon, and it's still so simple of just like, life has purpose, life has meaning, we should continue. He's like, shit, you're right, dude. And then out of nowhere, he finds the power to escape Pats, and then also get everyone to agree with him. why are they helping him? Like, some of them make sense, like Grisha and stuff like that, but like Bertolt's helping them, I guess, because maybe it's his friends, but they don't even talk, right? Like, they don't even talk, and I know it's like probably more of like a projection of them, but they don't really talk to like Grisha or Yams or like Zeke's like old teacher, and then they just kind of win this final fight, and I don't know, it just isn't well written. It's just really easy, and then they stop the rumbling like that because he comes out and he's like, "All right, Levi, kill me," and he does, and it's still such a like underwhelming talk no jutsu moment where it doesn't even feel profound. It just feels like such a cop out because they're like, "Oh, I gotta stop the rumbling. I guess if Zeke dies, then maybe that kind of stops the power or something like that, right?" And yeah, and then the actual explosion and the nuking and everything kind of looks cool, but then you just get so many moments of like even the bird titan, I forgot his name now, Colt or whatever, right? Even him showing up, like, it could have been so awesome, and it wasn't. And then they blow up Eren, and then the monster tentacle, organic origin of life thing comes out, and there's not much to it, right? There's not much to that fight. It's just like them holding him back, and then you still have the issue where you had a potential great writing out for John and Connie as like them turning into Titans, but then you reverse it, and in the manga it felt already cheap because like the beginning of the next chapter a month later they reverse it, but here it's like in the span of 20 minutes, and yeah, there's still the issue of like, how did Mikasa know to go into the mouth and find Eren and then cut him off, and then you still have, why was Mikasa the key? It's because fucking Ymir was in love with Freed, and it's just not even like explained better here, right? It's still the same exact issue where that's such a, like, it's not beautiful or profound or like even presented in a messed up way. It's just like, that's what it was, and she's been a slave to that ever since. And I get the themes of freedom and everything, the symbolism of the birds and freedom and flight and everything, but it's just like, and look, the worst part is, right, is ultimately the Eren and Armin conversation, which is the summary of the whole show, right? That's supposed to be everything. Like, I mean, years worth of build up and everything of what Eren's plan is, right? This is him just putting it all out there. And it's just not good still, because ultimately none of it is heroic or makes too much sense in a way where it's like, this ultimately was the thing. Because yeah, I like from a thematic standpoint that Eren was a slave at the end of the day, despite him doing everything to fight that. At the end of the day, he was a slave to time and destiny and didn't truly have his freedom, even though he was trying to present that. But the tone they take with how lighthearted they are, when at first you're like, hey, you killed 80% of the world. And here they added the line where 80% of the world would equal the population outside of the walls to the inside of the walls, which one, that's doesn't sound right. I don't remember that being in the manga, but it does. It makes a little more sense from a writing standpoint to say that rough number. But it's, if you look at the numbers, like Paradise Island had what, like 1 million people, so like that's not a lot of people with like all these nations. Like, either way, the world's screwed, and this makes no sense, right, from a writing perspective, that they can even come back. But Eren's double plan, right, which was, one, erase Titans, right? Which, sure, if that was the ultimate goal, I guess, right? But the only way to do that was have Mikasa kill him because she was a symbol of being a slave to a bad love or something like that. That was the parallel to what Ymir was, and now she can free him. It's just like that. Why? It's not interesting. It's not like, oh, like, whoa, oh, that makes so much sense, all the foreshadowing and everything, right? It's just such a cop-out way to include Mikasa. And I don't even dislike Mikasa like most of the fan base. I think she's a fine character, but here it's just like, she's just kind of interwoven in to be the reason for all of this. And then Armin is like the third wheel in a way where, he was the one lagging behind, but with the ideas, and the one with hope and everything to help kind of push them and like watch them. And then ultimately the point is that these guys will be the ones who save them and will be the heroes to what, the 30 people who were watching, who will retell the story. Like again, it's like it's still awkward to have the Eldian and the whatever, like it's still weird. It's still awkward to have the Marley and the Eldians kind of watching this whole thing happen from a distance, because that almost was like a weird writing thing where it's just like it just seems kind of silly just to have them sitting there, then to also have the force like arguments, and then be like, no, actually we like each other, and then we hate each other, and we like each other. It just is like, and the show was always so nuanced in the messages it was saying, and not trying to give a black and white, definitely being great. But here it's like doesn't ask really any interesting questions, right? It's very clearly like Eren did this for us. Everyone is emotional and happy, and Eren still ultimately is like has the Palpatine somehow return kind of answer. It's like I don't know, I don't know why Ymir felt like that. I don't know why I did that. I didn't know why I had to do it because it was the only way, and it just so clearly feels like it wasn't the only way. And not in terms of like he wasn't a slave to it. It just feels like from a writing perspective, like it sounds like you're gonna do the rumbling and then you stopped it. You arbitrarily chose 80% of the world dies, which is kind of like a horrible writing perspective. Like everyone's screwed. And then you have Eren, who now like loves Mikasa more than anything. And again, it just kind of feels like out of nowhere, and Mikasa does the kiss, and man, it's a lot of thoughts jumbled up at once, because it's like so many elements that like don't work, and like it's frustrating because like every single aspect of the ending and the reveals and everything, like all of Eren's plan like doesn't make sense. And again, I know it's not like a plan in terms of like his idea. He kind of like time is one thing all at once and it was all happening, but it doesn't feel like a fallen hero symbolic. Like there's no like, wow, that makes sense why you had to do that, even though it was like so destructive. It just feels like, oh, I wrote myself in a corner, and now like he kind of had to do the rumbling. But why do you have to do the rumbling? To kind of make his friends look like heroes in a dumb lelouch way that isn't well written and doesn't really make much sense and wouldn't actually work. On top of that, him saying that like none of this is really gonna work anyways, and he knows that, but he kind of like, the point was so he can kind of save his friends, but then he still falls back because he kills some of his friends. And like there's so much unnecessary aspects to the plot when you think of all this, on top of, and the one thing I will say, in the anime they seem to like go through this quick, right? Eren is the one who killed his mom, and they just jump over that so quick. That is such a humongous plot point that recontextualizes every single thing that's happened in the whole show, and they jump over that more than a lot of things. There was no reason to add that, like not a single one. Like it just adds so many plot holes when you realize he could have like manipulated so many aspects, and like no one had to die, no one had to do this, they didn't have to cause like a civil war, he didn't really have to go this far. There's like no reason this is like ultimately what it was. They wrote themselves to this point of the story, and it was very clear that like he didn't want to kill everyone, and he obviously even said like he's changed the ending and stuff like that, which is okay. You don't have to go with the original thing, and you can even go for a more hopeful tone with this, right? But yeah, like, and then you just get to the actual ending, which like Eren said, oh, none of this does anything, and it's like I didn't fix anything, and it wasn't really gonna help him. And he doesn't even say, he's not even very verbatim saying I was selfish and I did this to save my friends for a little bit. He just like implies like, hey, this is what was gonna happen, and I don't know. Like literally, like I don't know, because Yams doesn't know. And then you get ultimately to like the last couple of scenes, and it's like now they're ambassadors, but then that doesn't really help because they just created like an army anyways, and they're like, but there's hope and people won't change and everything. And it feels like this this show was so thoughtful of the themes and the arguments it made for everything, and for them to just be so superfluous with like what they're saying, just like people, humanity's humanity and always be like that. Like it doesn't go along with like how serious the show took these themes, and like how serious they wanted to show different perspectives and everything. It just feels like they just say, yeah, let's just, instead of just being profound and smart and showing different aspects and sides and purposefulness. And I'm not saying that they said what's wrong or what's right, and that's the beauty of it. They're just like, people are people and this is always going to happen. It just feels like everything was purposeless. And I don't mind an ending where everyone dies, or an ending that feels like hopeless or bleak or something like that, because I love bleak endings. But this was not even bleak. It was like a hopeful ending that's bleak in terms of that, like, it doesn't make sense, it wouldn't actually work, and it just feels so like purposeless. And then you get kind of, and it's like in a weird hopeful light, and then you get the extra pages, which turns out is what they did. They put the extra pages in as really poorly like cropped little frames on the side that show the world blowing up, and then you get the final actual full scene of, kid Eren or whatever walking into the Titan tree, which means he's going to start the whole cycle again. Like, I get thematically, I get it. You can make those same concepts, like humanity is gonna do their thing, and then there's gonna be, it's a cyclical thing of just revenge or problems or whatever. But it's like not well presented and not really what the show is going for. The whole time it just kind of like throws this in the end, and it's like not well explained, not well arrived to, not really profound. Doesn't have any impact. Like, you don't feel anything, and it's just really disappointing, because up to this point, Attack on Titan was, it's like, I've always still presented it as my favorite anime ever, right? Just because, like, even if I have small issues with things here and there, from an execution standpoint, it's like always so good, right? And I'm reacting to this like immediately after watching all this, and it's like I recorded me watching this, and I just, every time I always have chills or goosebumps, or I'm just so like engrossed in here. I'm just kind of like, this is the first time ever it was just kind of like, yeah, nothing, and I don't know if my reaction would have been different if I hadn't read the manga, but I read the manga before a lot of this, and the impact was still there because of the execution, how well it was done. And yeah, this is the worst writing in the series, but nothing's elevated here. And like, yeah, they just throw in the extra pages. Like, they still have the dove and the scarf scene, which, like, okay, like, yeah. And it's weird because I'm just like whispering here and trying to be quiet at night, and I don't know, I'm just feeling here like this should have been like such an epic event. And I know why they didn't make this a movie, like, this could have been cool as like a final movie in theaters or whatever, and made all this money and stuff. But it's like, it felt like Mappa just wanted to get it done with, and I don't blame him, unfortunately. And I don't think they did a bad adaptation. I just think they did a really straightforward one, considering they have a billion projects. I don't blame them. And all the story issues are still here, but I feel like it's more like prevalent here because now you're seeing the full picture. Like, you're seeing animated and fluidity with voice acting and everything, and it's like interesting because you see how like the monster, like how all the Titans look on the back. Which, by the way, where's the Colossal Titans? Why was it only like our Colossal Titan? There was no other Colossal Titans fighting. Oh, because that would have been tough to ride around, right? And then you see like the monsters, you see that how they react to things, the voices they use, and like how did Eren sound when he was being like whiny. And and there's like certain things, like I don't even mind Eren being whiny, right? I don't mind, like, more than the fan base. Like, I didn't need him to be some cool protagonist, whatever. It's like, it makes no flaws. I kind of love that, like, he deep down is still always the same him, and he's like, I'm just 19 years old and I have no clue what I'm doing, and I'm freaking out, but I got to do this, right? Because it's the right thing. But that would be cooler if what he was doing is actually made any sense and felt justified, and not in like a, like, dude, he's not a martyr. Like, he doesn't do anything to save him. And Mikasa's ending just feels kind of like flat, and all the other characters' endings feel flat, and they don't really get like treatment, and all their parents just happen to be there and say hello. And it's like it didn't really feel like Attack on Titan, Shingeki no Kyojin, whatever, it didn't really feel like that. I can always pinpoint like this is that, and it's just like I'm watching this, I'm like, this doesn't feel like the same thing. And yeah, I don't know, I can ramble for hours, and I know I'm gonna go to bed here shortly and think about all the other issues I have and be like, oh, I should have mentioned that and whatever. And yeah, like, I didn't do a deep analysis of the ending because that's been done a million times, and the ending is the same. So we've already known this, what it was going to be. And it's just like, ultimately, like, the story hurts even more after having the years to reflect on the manga ending and slowly, disliking it more and more as time gone on, and not trying to do it in a toxic way, just generally like saying like it's bad writing and it doesn't wrap up the themes or anything like well or make logical sense or work with any of the foreshadowing. It's just bad writing and it's very clearly retconned, right? And that's the ultimate thing. It's like always going to feel retconned. And so seeing it in animated form, which is the final iteration, the last hope of everything, right? That the adaptation didn't really do anything to go over the top or at least say, hey, some of the cool scenes at least look cool and sounded cool. It just felt kind of like straightforward and not, again, I don't want to say lazy, right? Because I don't want to hate on Mappa here, right? Because ultimately they've done a phenomenal job in this final season overall. It just felt really just like by the numbers, which is not something this show ever really does. And all the storytelling issues are still there, and it's more prevalent now because now I actually have it in my mind, right? So like re-seeing it now, it felt worse because I'm like, wow, is that really how bad it was? Because I've reread the final chapter and I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. But seeing it all animated, everything, I'm like, wow, it looks pretty, and kind of, and it still has all the same issues and feels even worse now because it's like they have to put all this effort into making this and do a few fixes here and there, but like as a fluid like hour and a half like movie, it's like, wow, what am I watching? It's like all falling apart in front of me. And yeah, but final thoughts, right? Because it's weird because this might be the last like Attack on Titan video I ever make, at least in terms of review or anything. And like this has been 10 years, right? Like I didn't read the manga when it first came out, right? It was 2013, me starting college, right? Or ending high school or whatever. And it was like immediately gripped me and it was like so important to me. And like the show has been really important to me over the years. And like sappy, like I think I said this in my manga review, but like it means so much to me. And it's just like it was almost like a beacon of excitement for me. And a lot of the characters and the meaning and this like the pure like hopefulness of like fight, like never give up, keep on going, fight for that freedom, keep on going, and seeing people be hurt and flawed and confused and like the hardship and the loss and suffering and like everything melted together meant so much to me and everything. So it like really hurts seeing like an ending. And again, like if this does it for you, like all power to you, and like you should find hope and meaning in anything, in any media, in any way you can. But like I don't think it's a toxic thing to say that it's like generally from a storytelling standpoint just is not good in any regard really, and it's disappointing that like I never really want to rewatch the ending again, but I want to go back and rewatch like the beginning and everything and still love it, but this doesn't really make me want to go back and start again in a weird way. But I don't think the ending will ultimately ruin the show for me. Like I don't think that ruins the show. Yeah, it sucks that the ending's not good, right? But considering how many seasons of content and everything, and despite the weird like final part ending finale, right? Like situation they did, right? It doesn't ultimately ruin the show for me, and I think all the good stuff is still there, and thematically there's still a lot of important questions being made. It just like ultimately kind of screws up the goal, right? It kind of screws up where the destination was and the reasoning behind it all, which can, retrospectively make things sound dumb, right? When you see Eren doing all these things, you're like, oh, he's just doing this because of this, and it's all an act and everything. And I get that, right? Or even seeing like the first death being like, oh yeah, no, Eren caused that. He shouldn't really be that side. Yeah, like it can contextualize a lot of that and make it worse retroactively, but I think there's still a lot from it. So it definitely makes it hard to think if this is still my favorite show of all time. But I will say, like, I still overall, it's been very important, an important journey, and it's just weird that it's ending. And I think, we get a few extra pages in a couple months, which sounds like it might just be a Levi, like flashback, even though he already had that, or it's, I don't know what it is. I'm a little nervous, and this is not a show I would want them to ever come back to and like do a sequel or follow up or even like extra things. They've done some OVAs and some stuff, and I think those were great. But I think kind of let it to rest, even though it's like, well, it's gonna redo the ending, which not gonna happen, and that's okay, I guess. And I don't think any other. It's not like a Star Wars sequel thing where like adding more in between and maybe giving it some context would help. But yeah, this is just me rambling because this is like really important to me, and it's weird. Like this was supposed to be this grand, big thing, and I feel like there's so much I want to say, not at the same time. And yeah, but yeah, ultimately, yeah, disappointed, and I hate doing the final video on this stuff as disappointed. At least the final like review. And not that I have a deep analysis of everything. There's stuff online, and like, don't get me wrong, like me reading stuff has also helped influence my opinion to a degree. Not more in terms of like the opinions as much, but seeing kind of where people come from with a lot of like storytelling and issues with like plot holes and stuff like that. And but yeah, it's tough. It's weird. I'm not in my usual setting, and I watch this and whispering this whole time, and yeah. All right. Well, see you later, Eren, in 2,000 years. Tatakai, Flight Takai, Mikasa, Tsukasa. Yeah, none of this is cute or endearing or friendly. It's just kind of sad. So